The story begins with a flashback to when MC made a promise to his childhood friend. The dream gets cut when he wakes up in summer school class, which makes sense for a guy who sleeps in class to be in summer school, something his drip friend Toji and his shoddy friend Hokuto are not surprised by. That said, Hokuto still lectures Haratora to become better and pursue the career of mages. On his way home, Haratora unexpectedly meets his childhood friend Natsumi, the chick from the dream. He ends up offending the chick by attacking her cuteness levels, which ironically, she replayed cutely before leaving. The next day, the boys meet up with Hokuto at the festival. She promises Haratora a kiss if he wins a festival contest, and he wins, but alas, the man keeps receiving the L's as the chick teasingly plays it off. The L's keep on coming, this time in the shape of a loli after Haratora fought with Hokuto about her wish for him to become a mage. Suzuka entered the scene mistakenly thinking Haratora is Natsumi, and asks him to help her with a certain ritual she wants to perform. Soon after, the Magical Investigation Bureau arrives to take Suzuka into custody for use of forbidden magic, but she utilizes Asura, the familiar, to clear them, capturing Haratora in the process. When Shadi arrives, she reveals Haratora's real identity. Suzuka leaves the couple with a message for Natsumi, also swipes some saliva with the main man before leaving. Hokuto reveals she loves Haratora, but ends up avoiding him the next day. Toji discusses what Suzuka wanted with Haratora before he is called away to meet Natsumi, which was a big mistake as Suzuka's familiar was inside Haratora's stomach after she kissed him. When he calls Natsu's name, the bug flies out of his mouth, just like how Itachi's ravens fly out of Naruto's mouth, and it steals Natsumi's spiritual powers. While taking Natsumi home, Haratora comes across Suzuka and leaves Natsumi to an officer to confront her. Suzuka reveals that she plans to do a forbidden ritual using Natsumi's powers to revive her older brother with her soul as an offering. The man tries to talk some sense to this crazy chick, but we all know you can't negotiate with crazy as she overpowers the Magical Investigation Bureau agents. A badly injured Magic Investigation Department agent binds Suzuka. Enraged, she calls upon her Juggernaut to kill him. Haratora saves the agent's life, but as he is about to die, Hokuto sacrifices herself to save Haratora. Now, here's the kicker, folks. Turns out Hokuto was a familiar all along and not a real person. Yet the main man still grieves over her death before making his way to Natsumi to become her familiar through a sussy ritual. Natsumi and Haratora make their way to the shrine by riding a familiar in the form of a white horse to stop Suzuka, so she sent her Juggernaut and Asura to stop them as the Juggernaut forms a protective barrier around the shrine. The couple battle the two, while Haratora develops a strategy to overcome the latter. During the battle, Haratora falls off, so Natsumi calls out for Hokuto, the Tsuchimikado family's guardian dragon, to save him. Hokuto defeats the Asura and successfully delays the Juggernaut, enabling Haratora and Natsumi to arrive at the shrine, but Suzuka stops them. Suzuka ultimately brings forth a spirit pulse that controls her brother's body, and it ends up strangling her. Haratora and Natsumi eventually save Suzuka and spare her life, letting her mourn her brother properly. Afterward, Natsumi reveals that the talisman familiar was a manipulation type, and Hokuto's controller was somewhere else alive. In Tokyo, Haratora meets with Natsumi after enrolling at Amio Prep School. He conveys the wrong impression that he knew Hokuto was Natsumi the entire time. Haratora doesn't realize Natsumi has kept her ribbon. When Toji appears to have enrolled at Amio Prep School as well, the two act overly familiar with each other, revealing that Toji knows Hokuto's controller was Natsumi. On the verge of making a connection, Haratora and Toji leave with Natsumi. As Toji said, stupid Haratora fits the main man well. That said, the boys arrive at the Amio Academy and they get greeted by the man-made Shikigami who guards the entrance Alpha and Omega. Shortly after that, the two meet the principal of the academy, Mio Korahashi. The three of them discuss Natsumi and her ancestor Yaku and the supposed connection between the two. Haratora and Toji then meet their homeroom teacher, Jin Sensei. He takes them to the class where the two introduce themselves to their new classmates, who are surprised since the two transferred half a year later when the new term started. Hyoko Korahashi, the granddaughter of the principal, is annoyed by this and has a brief argument with Natsumi. After that, Haratora and Toji befriend their new classmate Tenma. He gives them some info about Hyoko and the current Korahashi clan. Later that day, Haratora meets his Shikigami, Kan, who is hella cute. While Kan is demonstrating what she can do and how her tail works, Natsu enters at the worst time possible. And let me tell you, when one gets caught with a naked loli, the only thing that will happen is getting electrocuted. The next day, Haratora is not paying attention in class, so Hiroko suggests that the class should abandon those who can't keep up with their studies. Sensei, on the other hand, tells them that he would still help the students despite the strict academy rules. This irritates Hyoko. Suddenly, Kang shows up having her sword pointed toward the booba for badmouthing Haratora. In turn, Hyoko summons her Shikigami. Seeing this, Jin suggests they have a Shikigami duel, a duel of the familiars. Harutora asks the teacher to enchant his kit so he can join the battle alongside Khan. During her fight with Harutora, Kyoko remembers her childhood promise to Itsuchi Mikado boy. After this flashback, Harutora's wooden sword burst out due to overcharging. Jin-sensei stops the duel after watching Harutora lose. However, due to his duel against Kyoko, Harutora gets popular in his class, which upsets Natsumi, and the boy with swag picks up on it, as well as picks up on Queen Busty upset Aura. Natsu then summons her Shikigami dragon Hokuto, killing the fake Kakegyoki. Later, Kyoko confesses that she likes Natsumi and wants Harutora to help her start dating Natsumi. Harutora is surprised after hearing this as he can't tell her that Natsumi is a girl pretending to be a boy. After their conversation, Harutora has a flashback of a girl to whom he made a promise. The girl looks like a younger Kyoko, but he doesn't realize that it was her at the moment. Classic stupid Harutora. A few days after the incident, Harutora gets spotted by the dorm mother's school with a Shikigami that looks like Natsumi with a male body. They misunderstand the situation and take their pictures together, embarrassing Harutora. Weird rumors spread throughout the school about Harutora and Natsumi, which now includes Toji, thanks to the dorm mothers. To clear his head, Harutora plans to go shopping on his day offs. Since Toji has plans, he suggests Harutora and Natsumi go together. This makes Natsumi happy as she considers this as a date with Harutora. The next day, while searching for a clothes shop, the two get lost and end up in a love hotel, where they hide from the dorm mother chasing them. While the couple is sharing a light moment, Khan shows up and tells them the ladies are being aided by Kyoko and Tenma. However, it doesn't scare Natsumi as she thinks she can handle them, but when Jin shows up, she loses all hope. Harutora calls Toji for help, and the two escape thanks to him. They later meet up with Jin and others. Sadly, things don't go well for Harutora when he gets misunderstood again being together with Khan in the hotel room. Man, this guy never catches a break. Later in the evening, Jin successfully locates and captures the lunatic from before. The principal also shows up controlling her cat Shikigami, and she confirms the guy's connection with the Twin Horn Syndicate. Shortly after that, we see an old man called Ashio Duman rocking some cool ass shades, discussing with a man about the lunatic situation. The man states that he does not want to get involved with the Twin Horn Syndicate's conflict. He also seems interested in the Tsuchimikado branch family's son Harutora. While he is about to leave the old man, it is revealed that he has one arm missing, and that person is the real Kakegyoki. 6 months have passed since Harutora and Toji enrolled in Amio Academy, and the students prepare for their end-of-year exams. Natsumi is trying to make Harutora pass his exams by helping him in his studies. In his second duel with Kyoko, Harutora manages to beat one of her two Shikigami. Toji meets Mio in her room where she discusses the practical exam that will be the purification of a simulated spiritual disaster. She tells him about this exam as she thinks Toji has a handicap in this exam for being a victim of the spiritual disaster which happened 2 years ago. Meanwhile, Jin is meeting Daisen and Amami of the Amio agency. Amami, Jin, and the current investigator of the Twin Horn Syndicate. Atsuni Harada discussed the plans of the Twin Horn Syndicate, the organization behind the spiritual disaster 2 years ago. Ashio Duman had contacted a member of the Twin Horn Syndicate, Chihiro, to conduct a new spiritual disaster. The next day, the simulated spiritual disaster practical exam is held. The exam doesn't go well as a Chimera 01 type new appears on the exam site due to the miasma getting stronger. Upon sensing danger, Natsumi summons Hokuto to expel the miasma and keep her classmates safe. Then a rock star-looking fella named Reiji enters the scene. While pursuing the new and ugly gorilla thing, they crash at the exam site. Although he is supposed to be with the good guys, he sure doesn't act like it, especially after kicking the main man away, to then grab Toji, who is in pain due to the strong miasma, revealing he's a half-ogre. And just like that, the cool kid keeps becoming cooler and cooler by the minute. In a flashback, Toji remembers his past when he received treatment from Harutora's father. 2 years ago, Toji was possessed by the same ogre which caused the spiritual disaster. Toji is later admitted to the hospital but disappears after regaining consciousness. Zenjiro and his Shikigami, pair of Karasu Tengu, arrive at the scene of the growing spiritual disaster. He and Reiji suspect the Twin Horn Syndicate of causing the event. The two of them leave the scene to go after the new. Natsuma agrees to aid the Onmyo agency by using her dragon Hokuto to help fight the spiritual disaster. Tenma, Khan, and Harutora search for Toji, while Natsume and Kyoko meet Zenjiro. Later, Harutora runs into some strangers, but Kakuyuki arrives and helps a brother out. Before disappearing, Kakuyuki tells Harutora about Toji's whereabouts. Meanwhile, Reiji and Iwo try to take down Chimera 01. Back on the boys' side, Harutora explains that Toji can't kill him because Toji loves his friends. Yup, the power of bromance, ladies and gentlemen, nothing can beat it. While Mary is making a special barrier to contain the Chimera-01, Hokuto lures the Nu towards the barrier. Later, Chihiro casts a spell that causes Chimera-01 to progress into a Phase 4 phenomena. After witnessing the Chimera-01 progress to a Phase 4 phenomena, the Nu starts to run away with Natsume and Zenjiro in pursuit. Back in the hospital, Toji wakes up and finds that Granny is by his side. Mio tells him she has loosened his ogre seal before going to the exam so he can control the ogre rather than suppress it. Reiji Iwao and other Onmyuji exorcists are purifying the Chimera-01. Meanwhile, Zenjiro and Natsume get stopped by Chihiro in their chase. Zenjiro faces Chihiro, while the others continue after the Nu. Back at the hospital, Tenma comforts Toji and tells him he still considers Toji a friend before handing him Haru's weapon to deliver when he arrives at the scene later. After an intense battle, they are successful in purifying the monster. Reiji comments how their actions will cause Natsume to be famous among the Yaku followers and will re-energize them. Then he marks how this group is very interesting. While backing with a smirk on his face, he feels a cane on his back. It's Shadow's cane. He snuck behind him like a true boss, telling the sussy baka that he has put dozens of spells on him that will need time to research to remove, and then warns him to stay away from his students. Zenjiro also arrives to clear the air and tells them he failed to take Chihiro into custody since he had placed a stupid spell on himself and died. However, the most badass arrival of them all was the old man. The trio felt the powerful presence of Ashiya Duman, who came in a flying car. Duman told the kids that he was planning to retrieve the Nu for himself, but now he can't after that excellent purifying ritual. The group asked about his name when he says the area shakes and he disappears. #shivers. Later, Harada, the guy with the cops, is seen performing the Taisen Fukun ritual, thanking Shikiro for his work. 1 month after the spiritual disaster, Onmyo Academy's entrance ceremony is held and everyone's favorite loli Suzuka enrolls. She notices Harutora in the ceremony and declares that he was her first kiss, which causes him to be bombarded with questions. Zenjiro tells Jin that the Onmyo agency enrolled Suzuka in the academy as her penalty for the incident she caused last year. Natsume becomes worried because Suzuka saw her dress as a girl during last year's incident, so she continues to hide from Suzuka whenever that skirt passes by. While searching for Suzuka, Harutora meets an unusual senior third-year student who seems interested in Kan. Later in the evening, Suzuka reveals to Harutora that the Onmyo agency sealed most of her magic powers and gave her a penalty of staying in Onmyo Academy for 3 years. The next day, she keeps wanting to meet Natsume. Toji suggests Harutora to tell her about Natsume's circumstances regarding the family tradition of dressing as a boy. So the man later takes the loli to a cafe to talk. She cries that even though she killed Hokuto, Harutora doesn't present her. Harutora releases Suzuka from guilt when he tells her that Hokuto was a Shikigami controlled remotely by its user. After their conversation, Suzuka notices Natsume's presence and quickly recognizes her as the girl who wore the priestess outfit. After learning about Natsume's real gender, Suzuka continues to bully both Harutora and Natsume, though she chooses not to reveal the secret to anyone. However, one day when the couple does not answer their queen's phone calls, Suzuka decides to investigate Harutora's and Natsume's rooms as a punishment. Natsume becomes very reluctant and defensive, sparking a little magic fight. It ends with Natsu being tied up. Now inside her room, Suzuka notices a barrier placed on Natsume's closet, so she starts to break it down, but Natsume summons Hokuto and ends the situation. The next day, Harutora notices that Kan is still in her physical form and can't transform back. Toji suggests that it was Natsume and Suzuka's fault due to the spells used in the closet incident. Suzuka and Natsume both refuse to ask for the teacher's help. Kan wants to follow Harutora through school, so she disguises herself by wearing Harutora's favorite tiger imprinted jacket. She causes trouble in the cafeteria and gets mistaken for an unidentified tiger Shikigami, so the school issues a tiger warning and calls the Onmyo agency for help. The principal and Zenjiro conclude that someone set the tiger Shikigami to attack the students. Eavesdropping, Suzuka decides to help Kan escape using quote-unquote invisibility spell, which turns out has nothing to do with being invisible, but let's play along. They get noticed by Zenjiro, who attacks them immediately without looking too much into what he is attacking. Luckily, they manage to escape, but Harutora's jacket gets destroyed. Suzuka, Kan, and Harutora get scolded by Jin. He later helps Kan to get rid of her physical form. At night, Suzuka is seen sleeping with a one-eyed tiger plushie toy, meaning she has caught feelings for the main man, whose last name means tiger. Harutora's whole class goes on a Shikigami training camp somewhere in the mountains. Suzuka also attends the tour, much to Harutora's and Natsume's dismay. Toji then asks Suzuka for a partnership to defend themselves against the Yaku devotees after Natsume. She complies, leading Natsume to ask Suzuka if she is Yaku's reincarnation. Suzuka believes Natsume is, but can't be sure. She tells him about the Raven Coat, a spiritual tool Yaku used to wear that is the only way to find out if Natsume is his reincarnation. Jin-sensei and the principal overhear their conversation. Jin believes that the real Raven Coat is in Onmyo Academy, and the one in the Onmyo Agency is just a replica. The next day, Harutora is stopped by Kyoko, who wants to know if he really likes Suzuka. Sensing a disturbance in the force, Suzuka runs over, cutting the combo, to then rant about how Harutora likes Hokuto and not her. Harutora tells Kyoko about how Hokuto was a Shikigami controlled by someone outside. Hence, Kyoko speculates that Hokuto's controller had to be very powerful to make Hokuto seem like a real person for so long. Later, on the bus ride home, Harutora notices the pink ribbon in Natsume's hair. He uses his monkey brain to the fullest and realizes that it's the same ribbon he won for Hokuto at the fair. Back to serious business, we see the one-armed legendary ogre talking to the Duman, who's about to make his move. Meanwhile, stupid Tora dreams about the times he spent with a short-haired chick, wondering what if Hokuto was Natsume. The next day, the class is training to control their energy, and of course, the man fails and Khan comes out to help him. But what was funny is seeing their four-eyed friend also failing in the background. While that was happening, Toji was talking to Natsume, encouraging her to confess her feeling to him directly. Fast forward, we see Tenmo walking under the rain, contemplating if he is fit to be an Onmyo mage. When he arrives home, he sees the crime investigator waiting on him to ask for his help, but the kid tells him to fuck off respectfully, so the guy leaves and slips a spell in the kid pants. On the other end, the same-looking spell transforms into an owl in front of the agency. The owl tells them that Duman will be attacking tomorrow, seeking the Raven Coat. However, just like Jin, the cool kid of the Devon Generals believes that the real Raven Coat is in Onmyo Academy, and the one in the Onmyo Agency is just a replica. The next day, Harutora and Natsume walk together with lots of sexual tension between them. Moving past this awkward interaction, the group sees the news of the agency being attacked by dozens of spiders, to then cut to the old G arriving in a cool-ass fashion to play. The old G slowly makes his way to the campus to get stopped by the headmaster. Familiar, they catch up. But the old lady couldn't talk him out of his invasion, so she orders the lion statues to hold the doorway. But the old G has tricks up his sleeve, or rather Tenma's sleeve. By activating the spell, he snuck in the spiders, manages to break through the building. The headmaster familiar reaches the group and tells them to head to the roof building, so they fight their way to it to find the headmaster sitting at an altar. They hear a maniacal laugh from afar. The old G is here. Duman easily breaks the seal. The headmaster asks him if he found what he is looking for. He answers no, before biting the dragon and threatening to take it as his familiar. Suddenly, Jin appears from the shadows wearing traditional cloth. He creates Duman as master out of respect, and they recall their previous encounter that left Jin with one leg. They chit-chat a bit before the rematch begins. Mr. Jin throws the spider coming his way and then jumps over to the kids, removes the seal on the lowly powers, and tells her to put a barrier around them, then jumps back for Mortal Kombat. Jin starts using the elements as if he is the freaking avatar. When it seems that the old G has the upper hand, Jin reveals that he wasn't fighting him to take him down, but to get to the dragon and free it. Jin then cast a spell that sounded simple, till Shadow pulled a bamboo leaf that boosted the power of the spell and changed it entirely, catching the G off guard and trapping him. However, it is not enough to keep a top G like Duman locked, as the old man went old school and used brute force to break through the cage, sending powerful beams towards Jin, who fights back by empowering the spell with his life force as a price. When the dust settled, Jin is standing tall with white hair, while the old G is standing with a broken neck, confirming Jin's suspicions that Duman is no man but ghost. He pulls out birds to purify that old ghost ass like it was a spirit disaster. It's not enough, so Jin lunges at him, moving the fights to the streets to protect the children, and in the streets, the showdown ends when the cool kid arrives at the scene on his motorcycle, slashing the G in half. The boys tell Duman that if he answers their question, they will protect his spirit on its journey. Before he talks, an explosion occurs, blowing Duman out of sight. The person behind it is the investigator guy. Back at Old G Crypt, we see the Lolicon girl reading a ritual. She hears a sound coming from a sealed box. She opens it, and light comes out. In the days following, Harutora and the group are at the agency. They are surprised to see Tora attempting to do the spell. Jin did as expected. The blondie fails since he doesn't know the basics yet. The guy who's training our boy scolds Tora for being a copycat. Natsume tells the trainer to mind his own business, and then they leave. The couple head to the roof to check the altar. Then they find a pink-haired chick. She explains the history of the altar and school. So the next day, the couple alongside Toji head to the library to find out what happened in the past. The fellas dig for clues but find nothing, so they change their mindset and look for the graduate book to check how their teachers looked younger. In it, they stumble on the name Ryo Sadame. While discussing this discovery with the group, they come across the lolicon girl. She was passing by in a car being driven by a familiar, sitting in the back a kid rocking the old G shades. In the hospital, Daisen tells white-haired Jin that he will be scouting for the syndicate moles and revealing them to the light. The group then arrives at the hospital to check on their teacher. Daisen visiting Jin confirmed the blonde Loli's suspicions that their teacher was a divine general. When Jin tries to play it off, the old guy confirms it, and the kids ask why he left the divine generals. Toji, having connected the points, explains that he left the agency to join the school and look out for Natsume. Harutora asked about Ryo baffling Jin. He tells them this Ryo person was his classmate as the book said, but unlike the book says, Ryo was known as Suzu, which makes the main man think of Suzu as the lolicon girl. Having the raid started, the agency sends their Dutch-back general to guard the kids. The raids are taking place at the government offices, so the syndicate members began to run. Meanwhile, the kids are being washed over by Reiji Familiar, which creeps the main man. So he goes for a walk inside where he stumbles upon Reiji, who asks how Jin is doing, as well as what happened during the battle. So Stupitora tells him the details, and when the initial convo ends, the rock boy gives the main man some career advice in his twisted way. Back with the raids, the Popo are cornering the branch office the syndicate members are holding at. The alpha of the group tells them that their only way out is to trigger a spirit disaster. So the lackeys get pumped up and run outside while the alpha receives a phone call from the trainer to fill him on some info. Then he gets another call while running from Hirata, who asks him about the plan before disposing of the guide, leaving no loose ends that would tie clues back to him. However, all the planning and calculation prove useless when Daisen already saw through them. The two engage in a magical showdown. Outclassed in the spell department, the Hirata summons his familiars, high-class ones that caught the old man off guard, so the old man summons his defenders. Yet it's for nothing as Hirata's defenders are stronger. When the familiar goes to deliver the last blow, Hirata stops him and walks up to talk to the old man. Daisen begins to ask questions that get answered left and right. Suddenly, Hirata senses something wrong and questions himself why he is answering the old man's question. That's when he realizes he was under a spell, an illusion spell the old man put on him with his fan. After defeating the youngling unconscious, he transforms into a hot chick, the pink-haired chick from earlier to be precise, shocking the old man. Meanwhile, on the other end, Trainer Dush reveals himself as a cult member to the group. Yet he is a respectful cult member. When Natsume refuses to comply with his demands, he goes like, "Understandable, have a nice day." Sadly, the same can't be said to him, as Shaver swoops in and cuts the man down. Then a spirit disaster begins at the Onmyo Agency's branch office. Harutora, Natsume, and the others fight against Shaver. They use multiple spells, a dragon and a half-ogre, which instead of slowing the madman down, made him go more berserk. In the process, Natsume's true gender is revealed in front of her friends and other students. Frustrated from his weakness, Harutora channels his rage and looks deep within himself, managing to tap into the power of the star mark she gave him earlier. He realizes he can now sense the type of spirits around him and how to fight them. He defeats Shaver using Jin's spell and another spell he copied from Reiji, which was kinda poetic since the last word Shaver said was his master's name. Later, Daisen talks with the chief about Soma, assuming she is part of the Twin Horn Syndicate. Soma enters the room and Daisen finds out the chief is also working with her. The old man tells him what his mother thinks about his actions, so the chief replies, "It's not your goddamn business." Daisen looks at a call he ignored earlier from the chief's mother, realizing he fucked up the last words he said, who figured the first time I ignore a lady's call would be my last. After killing Daisen for knowing too much, Soma and the chief agree that it's time to attempt turning Natsume into Yaku by using the Raven Code. A few days later, the school classes resume as usual. Suzuka persuades Kurahashi to make up with Natsume and Harutora despite Kurahashi's disappointment that they all kept secrets from her. Harutora talks to Kyoko, then realizes that he is the one from her childhood memories. Later that evening, a Divine General agent goes to apprehend Natsume's father, but the man is being protected by a former agency Divine General and an op farmer. Seeing that the flat lady has no chance to win, the general with the hentai hair steps in, and even though he knows the trio personally, he has orders to obey. The next day, the Tsuchimikado house is found to be burned down, with Natsume's father nowhere to be found. Later, Jin gets approached by the newly reincarnated Ashiya Duman, who came by to give Jin his reward for besting him. Jin asks questions he had on his mind to confirm the connection between Twin Horn Syndicate and the Onmyo Agency headquarters, and after answering them, Little G put his number in Jin's phone if he ever needed help. Back at the school, Soma arrives at the campus and asks the only busty chick in the series to show her around. After learning about the fire, Soma reveals to Natsume, Harutora, and the others that she's connected to the Onmyo agency. The trio is dumbfounded but not completely revulsed by the new chick, as she didn't come across as a cult lunatic. She asks Natsume for a duel to quote-unquote strengthen their new bond. If you think about it objectively, it's a test to see whether Natsume is worthy of Yaku's reincarnation or not. The new chick loses control and starts enchanting a spell that only affected the main man. Jin-sensei steps in to break up the fight when he notices that Harutora's spirit energy seems unusual. Later, Natsume makes up with Kyoko, and they acknowledge that they will be rivals for Harutora's attention. The principal talks to Jin-sensei about him resigning as a teacher and working independently behind the scenes again. She offers to protect Natsume in Jin's stead, but is also shocked when Jin reveals that Natsume is a girl. Meanwhile, Chief Kurahashi is shown talking to a man who is bound to Soma. He claims to be Yashihara, one of the imperial pallbearers that Soma can summon. Soma enters with Mutobe, the other pallbearer. She questions whether Natsume can become their comrade, to then becomes very excited when she is presented with a package presumably containing the Raven coat. Excited, she calls Mrs. Buba to ask her to act as a peacemaker between her and Natsume, and Buba says sure, before revealing the shocking twist that Natsu is a girl. In a dream, Natsume reminisces about her childhood, revealing her attempts to be close to Harutora through Hokuto. Later, the group goes to the fireworks festival. While Natsume and Harutora are alone together, she begins to tell him about Hokuto. Their conversation gets interrupted when Soma arrives. Now here's where the new chick becomes the worst girl in the series. Soma explains her family's connection to Yaku, revealing that Harutora is Yaku's true reincarnation. She lets loose the Raven coat, but instead of settling on him, it begins to possess him. Natsume tries to stop the process, but she gets stopped by the drip familiar who kicks her dragon-scaly ass. By this time, all the others have arrived at the scene, and they follow Harutora to stop him. Natsume recalls all the events up to date and realizes that the star spell she placed on him didn't give him spiritual seeing power, it only undid half the curse her dad put on him, sealing his natural abilities. She decides to completely undo the seal so that Harutora's spiritual power can settle down. And she does it in the most elegant fashion, descending to kiss the main man. After doing so, the Raven coat stops possessing him. In the process, however, Natsume is fatally injured but manages to tell Harutora that she loves him before passing away with a smile on her face. Harutora runs off with Natsume's body, while Toji and Suzuka follow him, trying to talk some sense into his grieving soul. Crashing into an empty building, they encounter Darenji Shido, Soma's summoned familiar. Suzuka recognizes that he is her father, though he had died and was brought back to life. He tries to persuade Harutora to join the Twin Horn Syndicate, but the group declines and engages him in a magical fist fight. And let me say, for a dead man, this guy can move like a butterfly and sting like a bee. Not wanting to continue the fight, Shido offers the Taisen Fukun ritual to bring Natsume back to life as a bribe. He departs before the Onmyo agency catches up, taking Harutora in for interrogation. Toji and the others wait at the Onmyo agency, explaining what happened to the principal. She talks with Zenjiro, and they say they'll handle things. Toji and the others decide to sneak back to the Onmyo agency later to see Harutora and attempt to retrieve Natsume's body in case there's any chance of reviving her. Meanwhile, Jin-sensei calls the old G, or rather the young G now, Ashia Duman, and asks for his help to attack the Onmyo agency. A well-needed help, since he will be facing Rock Boy Reiji after the chief recruited him again to fight Shadow. In the agency, Harutora talks with Chief Kurahashi and Yashimaru about resurrecting Natsume with the Taisen Fukun ritual. While the talks are happening, Master Duman and Shadow arrive at the scene to start their invasion. Duman engulfs the building with spirits of his older self. One of the Divine Generals goes out to fend him off, but since her specialty is creating barriers, she fails. Hence, her superior, known as the Flame Demon, entered the ring in his traditional cloth. Damn man, it's so cool to see everyone respecting how powerful Duman is, calling him master and wearing attire fitting to the fight against a man of caliber. However, what was cooler is seeing everyone shocked how Jin managed to recruit such an absolute unit to help him. Speaking about the man, while he was making his way towards the office, Jin got stopped by Reiji, who was very eager for this fight. Back to Tora's situation, he almost agrees to cooperate with them, but then Khan appears and talks him out of trusting such shady people. She assures him that if he is Yaku's reincarnation, he will find a way to revive his beloved himself. Seeing their peaceful plan went downhill, the agency lunatics restored to good old violence. Luckily for Tora, he gets helped by a spider holding a fan that belongs to the old womanizer. Although it was not enough to break him out, hence the cool ogre friend came to the rescue, boosting the odds of success. A flashback reveals that Suzu directed Tenma to go to the agency alone, and it shows how Tenma single-handedly infiltrated the Onmyo agency and was aided by a magic spider. One of the spells his mother developed broke the seal on the Raven coat. Also, as expected, Daisen is still alive as he was controlling the spider. Back to the action, Jin-sensei easily defeats Reiji, but since the hot-headed Ogre Slayer is now admitting defeat, Jin decided to break the curse he put on him before, a flashing spell he put on his sunglass, telling him it a fitting spell for a pretentious who wears sunglasses inside. Toji retrieves Harutora from Chief Kurahashi and Yashimaru. They meet up with Suzuka and Kyoko outside. Tenma appears with the Raven coat, and they all manage to get away from the Onmyo agency. Tenma relays that Suzu can help with the Taisen Fukan ritual if Harutora chooses to do it, to which he says he will. Zenjiro and Jin-sensei appear. After hearing their plan, Zenjiro plans on stopping them from using forbidden magic, telling them about its dangers and how it eats one soul slowly, making the group reconsider their actions. However, Kyoko manages to slip into a star-reading state for the first time. She tells them what is forbidden is made forbidden by man, adding that she still sees Natsume as stars and that she's waiting for Harutora. Shocked by the star reading, the group decides to go through with the plan. The cool kid tries to stop them, but Jin intervenes, helping them run away. Yaku's memories of meeting Kan/Hishimaru are shown. Presently, Harutora continues by himself to retrieve Natsume's body. Reiji intercepts him. Having not gained all the previous memories of his former life, our boy gets easily beaten. But Kan manages to relieve some heat by attacking the rock boy on the ground. Alas, she gets kicked aside and stabbed, so Harutora goes to save her. In the process, he loses his eye and also gets kicked aside unconscious, and to make matters worse, he summons Shaver to come out and kill the main man. Enraged, Kan decides to release the seal on her so she can access her full power. She transforms into a grown version of herself, Hishimaru, and let me tell you, although the previous version was better drawn, this version can kick some ass as she can dish some blazing flames and perish shields with her energy bow. That said, it's still a 1 versus 2 fight and Kan can't keep up with the Divine General while trying to protect her master from Shaver. Thankfully, Kakayuki appears in time, catching the sword with one hand. Seeing they are outclassed, Reiji holds off his familiar and leaves to fight another day, ending the fight with the two loyal subordinates bowing to their new/reincarnated master, showing their loyalty to him. The three continue and find Natsume being guarded by Suzu, who apologizes for her mistakes, saying she didn't mean for things to turn out this way, but the main man, having matured after the latest events, doesn't care about what she says and simply takes his chick peacefully to perform the Taisen Fukan ritual. Elsewhere, we see Jin driving a car with the G in the back. He asks Duman to become his familiar, and the latter agrees. Back with the main gang, Harutora's friends are waiting to hear from him. They receive only a vague phone call from Suzu saying that the ritual kind of worked. Harutora is shown with Natsume again, just long enough for her to repeat that she loves him and for him to kiss her. She supposedly drifts off, with Harutora promising he'll see her again before departing to the sunrise, with Hishimaru and Kakayuki following him as his loyal subjects.